Welcome to the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast, where it is never too early for fantasy football. My name is Jeff.
And I'm Alex.
Hey, Alex, how's it going today?
It's going well. We're just counting down till the 4th of July. As you can see, my little patriotic shirt here. And shortly after, we'll be talking about training camp stuff. So it's going to be interesting. And, down the line, we got our projections and rankings too. So we want to get a jump on that before other people because we believe it's never too early for this kind of stuff. Right, Jeff?
We do. And we are so close to summer. Summer officially starts tomorrow. And we're about 11 weeks away from the NFL kickoff. So in about a little over 70 some days here, we will be getting kicked off and we'll be getting going, and we'll be able to apply everything that we're learning on this podcast and everything we're learning about the news to real life football. And as always, thank you for downloading, listening, liking, and commenting on our podcast videos. Please subscribe to us on the socials. We are on Spotify, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, and Twitter with the handle at N2EFantasy. Alex, what do we have for today's show?
We've got an update on the EA Sports college football game. We have an NFL player reportedly lost a bunch of money in gambling. We have the leading candidate for Hard Knocks that the NFL wants. We have a number of news on wide receivers and running backs, so we can go line by line. We have a kicker signing as well. And we also have an Aaron Rodgers trade rumor that is pretty interesting, as well as just some scheduling dates that we can add on to here too. So without too much spoilers, let's just go into the first item here, and that is EA Sports is being sued by the Brander Group over the new college football game because the Brander Group has been the traditional middleman that has tried to work out deals with Division I athletes, and EA Sports is being accused of going around them to try to sign with the athletes through another group instead. So that's fun, and if they delay this game coming out because of that, or they have to drop the real athletes, I'm going to be annoyed because I want the NCAA game to come out, and I want to actually use the real players. So this is very annoying to me. Jeff,
Right.
How do you feel about this?
No, I do think that this is probably going to be one of the things that put a nail in the coffin for EA Sports and NCAA being able to use real players. I do see them not using players' name and likeness. I just think it's going to cost too much money, and it's not going to make it worth EA Sports' time and effort to do it. It's kind of weird and interesting at the same time because they do this with the NFL players, and they're clearly happily compensated for their involvement in the game. So maybe there is something that they could do, but it does look like there is a speed bump that this game is going to hit, and I don't know if it hits shelves this year, to be honest.
Yeah, it's looking like it's going to be the following year. I don't know if they'll get this worked out. They were talking about paying each player $500 with potentially paying some of the star players a little bit more. We don't know if that's still going to happen. It would make sense from their standpoint to go ahead and try to put a game out. So do what they used to do with the NCAA games and artificially make up new characters, like new games, new players, whatever, nameless ones. And then if they ever get this resolved, then you can put out the new players, or the actual players.
I mean, if they got it resolved after they released the game, they could always do it in a update.
Mm-hmm.
But as we've talked about previously, EA really is going to have to up the gameplay in all of their football games in order to kind of keep interest going forward in their football games, because Madden is similar, not the same every year, but similar every year. And I know this college football game would add a level of excitement because you could potentially import those players over to Madden and continue to play with them. We were able to do that in the past. And so that would add a level of excitement, but that does not change the gameplay and improve the gameplay at all. It just is a feature that a lot of folks would like to see.
Well, if you could put real players and bring them over into Madden, then you can have a fresh draft class of actual real draftable players. That would be nice to have like real players and have like the next year's draft class come into Madden, which has never happened before as far as I can tell. So
I mean,
that would have
you
been
could potentially do last year's too. I'm surprised they haven't done something like that already. Like, you could be a GM of a team and kind of start over pre NFL draft, and you guys get to redo the whole entire draft.
they did that in NFL Head Coach, the greatest franchise game of all time. So you can look at NFL Head Coach 09, Jeff, and it's out there.
All right, I will have to dig through the archives to find that.
Okay, well, let's talk about an NFL player out there, an unnamed NFL player. Hopefully, we do get to find out. Reportedly lost $8 million in gambling. I don't know whether it was in one bet, in many bets, or what it was about, but I cannot wait to find the details because that's a lot of money, and that's probably a year's worth of salary for somebody out there in the NFL. So I don't know if it's everything they have, or if they just make so much money that they can afford to lose that. Jeff, do we have any details on this at all?
Well, I thought you were alluding to us that it's a year worth of salary for you.
Oh, I wish.
Ah, ah. But basically, what it looks like here is there's a player that has a gambling problem. It's never funny if someone has a gambling problem. Everyone should keep themselves in check, and if they are having issues, they should reach out for help. Seems like this player needs to reach out for help because $8 million lost gambling is quite a bit of money. And I don't know about folks at home, but if I'm ever going to put money down on a game, I'm going to put money down on a game that I'm fairly confident that I'm going to know the result of. And I'm not going to bet on just any random game. But that is just my philosophy.
Well, I'm told through my Twitter sources that they can't even bet on the combine or the draft either.
Well, there is a potential for inside knowledge there.
I feel like that's just a little too far, but
It,
yeah, losing $8 million is a lot as well. So
is
that's
that why
crazy to
Stroud
me.
wanted Tank Dell so much?
Oh, to make that money because he put that wager in, you think? Hmm. Hmm. Yeah. Well,
Yep.
you just created a scenario where now I agree that they shouldn't bet on the draft.
Right, because you could definitely have someone like pulling for somebody extra hard, especially someone in a power position like a quarterback could actually have some sway on that, like they did with the Texans earlier this year. But $8 million, man, $8 million.
That is a lot. They should have bet that with me. I would have enjoyed having that money. Sounds like they're not very good at betting, so I probably would have won.
$8 million.
Oh, thanks, Doctor Evil.
Right.
ah, well, something that's not quite as evil but still weird is the NFL wants the Lions to do Hard Knocks for a second time. I think they did it last year. Jeff, would this be the first time that someone would do it back to back?
Yeah, because no one wants to do it. So technically, the Lions aren't even eligible to do it. So the things that make you eligible to do it is can't do it last year, which the Lions aren't eligible for that. You can't be a playoff team, and you can't have a new head coach. Basically, I think the team that everyone wants to see do this would be the New York Jets, but who knows if the Jets are going to be forced to do it or not. But they're the team that I want to see because I want to see how Aaron Rodgers acclimates with this new team. And that is kind of the most interesting storyline that I could get out of Hard Knocks. And I don't know if Hard Knocks is going after the Lions because they like Dan Campbell. I don't really know what is going on there. Do you have any thoughts on why they would want the Lions to come back?
Because they're an ascending team, Jeff, and because they want to show that they deserve 12 wins this year. Clearly,
You gave
uh,
them 12, right?
I think so. Yeah, pretty sure. Yes. Also, we want to see Jameer Gibbs, and we want to see everyone's favorite RB1 candidate, David Montgomery, as well. We want to see if two stud running backs can coexist like they could in days of old. But I don't know. I think some people might want to see Chicago because we really need that Roshan Johnson content, and I don't think that we're going to get that kind of level entertainment with the Jets.
Well, we get to see Zach Wilson and Aaron Rodgers coexist in that locker room, and we get to see Aaron Rodgers and Garrett Wilson build some chemistry. Get to see Allen Lazard overtake Garrett Wilson for the number one wide receiver spot in the Jets locker room. We get to see kind of who Aaron favors early, and we get to see what Corey Davis gets to do, what his role is going to be in this offense. Like, is it going to be a role player, or because he's a veteran, is he going to get a shot to start? Like, we really don't know. There's a lot that we don't know about the Jets offense, and we also have Brees Hall coming back from the torn ACL, so we need to see how he's going to fit in. And I believe they have a rookie running back that could pass by the running backs that filled in for him last year. So there's a lot of moving parts with the Jets, and I can see the Lions, but we already saw them last year. I don't know if their ratings were that high, but also Hard Knocks does a mid-season variety now. So I don't know who would be the mid-season team that they would pick to do, but last year was the first year that they did the mid-season. As I noted, if they're having trouble finding a team to do the preseason variety, they're going to have a trouble in the season finding someone to do it as well. But the Arizona Cardinals did it last year, which was they were already down Kyler Murray at that point. Like, I guess the in-season one sounds better in theory than it actually does, and that it actually produces in real life.
Well, do you think if they did the Jets, do you think we would get more details on Aaron Rodgers potentially being traded to the Patriots and turning that down? Do you think we find out more about that?
Yeah, I think we find out what happened to get Aaron from Green Bay to New York.
There was the rumor he was going to go to the Patriots instead, and he didn't want to go there. He wanted to go to the Jets. So I wish that we could find out why, Jeff. I think you have speculation why he didn't want to go to the Patriots.
So I think we talked about this a little bit before, Alex, but to share with our viewers, I think we have two different thoughts on this, but we get to the same conclusion. I don't see. So Aaron Rodgers is trying to build his own legacy. There's one thing that Aaron does very well, and it's the reason why he throws away the ball a lot. Like, he's really concerned with his legacy. He is one of the quarterbacks in NFL history that's thrown the least amount of interceptions for the amount of passes that he's thrown. So he's very concerned with his stats. So why would Aaron want to go to a team that has the greatest quarterback of all time that's retiring right now, supposedly? Still not off my sheets, Tom Brady. Aaron would have to watch Tom Brady come to town on the second game of the year and get inducted into the Ring of Honor. There's just a lot that would take away from Aaron Rodgers and his legacy right in New England. And does he want to play for a rigid old coach? I don't know. And as you had noted, you might have felt that they were a little bit undermanned in New England for Aaron Rodgers to want to go there.
Yeah, I don't think they have much in the way of pass catchers. I know they are paying tight ends quite a lot of money, and they brought in Juju, and there's a couple of odd wide receivers that they like there that aren't very high profile. It's not a very loaded team. They're the worst team in their division right now. Maybe Aaron Rodgers would have changed that. Maybe Aaron Rodgers being there would certainly entice someone like DeAndre Hopkins to also sign with the Patriots for sure. But he didn't want to go there, and there's a zero fun head coach. I think you're certainly at least partially right, maybe 100% right, that he doesn't want to follow in Tom Brady's footsteps, and a lot of the things he's done decision wise has been around Tom Brady's decisions as well. So for a number of reasons, that's not a very appealing landing spot, and it makes way more sense to go to the Jets, who have an ascending wide receiver in Garrett Wilson, who have Brees Young, who is a really good running back, although Ramondre Stevens is really good as well. They have just more pass catching options, and they had more cap space to bring in a lot of his buddies. They also have the color green. I think just like he wants to avoid Tom Brady's legacy, I think he still has something where he wanted to go where Brett Favre had already gone and then do better than Brett Favre. So potentially win a Super Bowl with the Jets, which is not something Brett Favre was able to do. There's a lot of wrinkles to it, and I think it's very interesting.
Absolutely. And I know you mentioned Brees Young. I think you meant to say Brees Hall, who is
Brees
their
Hall.
young running back. So
there's now more than one Brees. So
yep.
now I get all, or Bryce, whatever. Brees,
yep. Brees Bryce. Yep. It's definitely a tongue twister, and it's definitely one that you have to think about, because I've actually messed up earlier today on that. So I'm right along with you on that one.
All right.
But it's this guy, the guy that you mentioned, plays for this team right here in the shirt that I'm wearing. I don't wear the American shirt. I wear the shirt of America's new team.
Sure. But we were just talking about Tom Brady. Tom Brady's former team, Tampa, they have just made a new signing, and they signed the famous kicker, Rodrigo Blankenship, Mr. Goggles himself. Jeff, I know we talked about it last time, but do you think that this is a good signing for Tampa Bay?
I do. And I think it because I think that he was an amazing kicker for Indianapolis before he got hurt. And he was never the same kicker after he got hurt. And he actually got surgery to repair that. And he is still a very young kicker. That means that they could have him for a lot of years, and it would be like something that he would grow into. He's 26 years old, so it means that he could kick for another 10 years on this team if he actually latches on and is able to be productive with them. And also, not to stray too far into the season here, but if we think about teams that are having trouble scoring, they're going to score a lot of field goals. And these aren't the worst field goal kickers to get on teams that have trouble getting into the red zone, have trouble scoring. And this could be the guy that leads the league in 50-yard field goals this year. And most leagues give you 5 points for those. We'll see what happens, but a team that could struggle to get the ball close enough in the red zone makes it for a better kicker. So just a name to watch out for. And I believe that he's competing with Chase McLaughlin in the preseason. I would give the leg up to Rodrigo Blankenship for this role.
Give the leg up, huh? I appreciate that joke. Woo. All right. I don't think that Blankenship is as important as potentially re-signing Mike Evans, which is what Tampa Bay looks like they're doing, which is a shocker for us. So you specifically have speculated Mike Evans might be on the move because his contract was approaching an end, and they already put a lot of money into Godwin. They're probably not going to be very good, but it looks like he is staying despite the quarterback situation that they have, and despite the fact that they probably won't be going to the playoffs. So, Jeff, what do you make of Mike Evans potentially getting an extension here?
I think that my prediction is incorrect at this point because I did predict early in the offseason that Mike Evans was a name to watch out to be traded. And it wasn't for Tampa to get under the salary cap or anything like that. I mean, it wasn't because that they were tanking or anything like that. But it was because that Tampa was paying him a lot of cash this year. And I could see Tampa being a team that didn't want to be as cash strapped this upcoming year now that Tom was gone and they're kind of retooling a little bit and they don't really have the quarterback position figured out. And I thought that he could really help a team kind of like Kansas City or Buffalo or another team that's looking for that veteran wide receiver over the top. But it did not come to fruition. It does look like he will be staying in Tampa probably to end his career at this point. Like, I don't really see there being another contract after this, and I don't see him wanting another contract after this because just wide receivers, they typically wind down like in another year or two from where he is right now in his career. But I will wrap it up with one last thing here. On Mike Evans, he has started his career with every single year getting a 1,000 yards receiving, and I can see that being a goal or an objective for a stuttering Tampa team this year. I very much expect them to fall out of the blocks and never really get this race moving, but I do see them trying to get Mike Evans his 1,000 yards receiving so he can continue his streak.
Interesting. I think that they would be better off probably trying to trade him and retool, but maybe Baker works out. Maybe they only have to stink for 1 year and get a good quarterback, and they're back on track. I don't know, but it's kind of a shocker for us. But another thing that's not a shocker for us, and also wide receiver related, is Stephon Diggs returned to the Bills training camp. I'm not sure if he actually participated in drills, but he was there on the sidelines. So clearly everything's all in the past, right, Jeff?
So I don't think Diggs is going to be traded. I don't think Diggs is not going to play this year, but I do think Diggs got his point across, which he is very frustrated with his role in the offense. And I think this could be taken a couple of different ways because I do think that he is Josh Allen's first target every time. I think when he said role, I think it meant like trusting him as a veteran player to have a say in this offense. Also, trying to scheme him ways to get open because I do know towards the end of the season and into the playoffs, he had a very hard time getting open because teams would just take him out of the picture. This is a team, I know we just talked about it with DeAndre Hopkins, even we just talked about it with Mike Evans. This is a team that needs another wide receiver to play opposite of Diggs because that is going to be the most effective way for Diggs to be open is to get another effective wide receiver across from him to remove that double coverage because a team cannot take Diggs out of the game if there's multiple options that are creditable threats to bust the game wide open. So I don't take Gabe Davis as that. I don't take Dawson Knox as that. They didn't really do anything this offseason to bolster their offense. I know they did Dalton Kincaid in the first round, but rookie tight ends, we all know how that can end. But still, I still don't think it's enough firepower to set the AFC on fire, make that run. And I do know from being in the Buffalo area that Diggs is always one of the last players on the field when they do lose that last game of the season. And I can tell you Diggs is probably fed up with that.
So hurry up and sign DeAndre Hopkins. Is that what you're saying?
I would. But I mean, there's other options out there. There's trading for Renfro. There's trades out there to be had as well.
Well, you can make a disappointing trade like the Bears trading for Chase Claypool, who not only did that pick end up being essentially a first round pick, but also he's apparently disappointing everyone in the organization in camp right now. He doesn't have very good effort. It looks like he's not self motivated. Jeff, what do you make of this? Do you think Chase Claypool will turn it around? Do you think this is ultimately going to be a huge bust of a trade?
I think this is one of the more interesting storylines for 2023. With Chase Claypool, with the amount of capital that it took to acquire him, which was the 32nd pick this year, which would have been a first round pick any other year, as you just had said, it is paramount that Chase hears this feedback. Like this is his time to get his act together. He is not that old, and he is not that far gone. It is still possible for him to turn around his career. He is 24 years old. There's some wide receivers that aren't even out in the NFL at 24. So what this is telling me is that he has time to turn it around, but he does need to mature, and he needs to mature rapidly, because I believe this is a maturity issue and not a talent issue. What is your take on Claypool? Because I know you've been much more bullish on him than I have been, but if he doesn't turn around his maturity, I don't see him making an impact.
I am much more bearish on Chase Claypool than you. Don't even pull that bull stuff, man. Come on. Come
Chicago
on
Bulls.
now. I think Chase Claypool has all the physical talent, all the physical tools, but he's always been a raw player. He has not been able to put it together. I initially liked him when he first was drafted by the Steelers, brought into that organization, because the Steelers have a notorious record for actually getting mid-round, late-round wide receivers and making them look phenomenal. So I thought for sure Chase Claypool was going to be one of their success stories. He has not been. He was traded to the Bears for a high pick, the first pick in the second round, which was essentially the 32nd pick in this draft. And he's not good. He's not a good wide receiver. He's not going to be the second option there. He might be the third, probably not the third option even with that offense. So I don't know that it's going to be anything but a bust. They're a run first offense. They've got a quarterback who ran for 1,000 yards. They've got a number of running backs who are competing to be the number one running back behind that quarterback. They have DJ Moore, who is going to take most of the targets. They have Komet at the tight end position. They have Mooney at the wide receiver position. They have Amon Ross St. Brown's brother, Equiminius, who is also competing for that number two role behind DJ Moore. I don't think that Claypool is going to win this, especially not with his lack of effort. You would think that someone who's on the hot seat as much as he is would actually put a little bit more effort into it, but he seems content to disappear and just drop off the football map. So I don't know. I don't know what to make of it other than he's pretty disappointing.
Yeah, and I do think that he has time to turn it around, and he needs to hear this feedback, and he needs to mature at a rapid rate, especially on it as a team is going to be ascending like the Bears is with DJ Moore, Mooney, Komet. They have a lot of skill. Roshan Johnson, do you know him?
I do know Roshan. He's he's a future fantasy lord and savior. So let's just keep an eye on him because he is getting glowing praise and he's just a rookie. We have been talking about surprise resigning. We've been talking about a disgruntled wide receiver. We've talked about a disappointing lack of effort from a wide receiver, but we also have something else that affects of fantasy wide receivers outlook. We have Tyreek Hill under investigation. He allegedly had a confrontation with a marina employee, allegedly assaulting him, whether it's a hit, whether it's a pat, whether it's a poke. We don't know that yet. That has not been released. But this is disconcerting for fantasy owners, especially who already have Tyreek on their roster in dynasty leagues, because he has a track record of some violent outbursts in the past. And should there be a video of this, should there be evidence that he actually struck someone, he will face a suspension. I have no doubt of that. But we also don't know how bad the incident was. He literally could have poked someone. He could have smacked someone on the back of the head with like a slap or something, or he could have punched somebody. We don't know. We don't know any of that information right now. Jeff, how do you feel about this situation?
My best advice on the situation would be to hang tight, but it doesn't seem like there's any video, doesn't seem like there's any bodily harm. So it seems like, in a way, it's only going to go the civil route, which should prevent Tyreek Hill from getting too much punishment, if any punishment at all. But if there's witnesses and video and it's a lot worse than what I just said it was, then that's where the stay tuned part comes in handy. But I do think that none of the national reporters are on top of this right now, which shows how low down the totem pole of news this actually is right now. So hopefully.
Yep, hopefully it's a nothing story and no one is hurt, because we don't even know if anyone's even hurt. For all we know, since it was at a marina, he could have caught a very nice fish and tossed it to somebody there. So we don't know anything more than there was an incident. We have been talking about the running back market for a while now, and one of the best running backs in the league, the Colts' Jonathan Taylor, is beginning extension talks with the Colts front office. So that is something where I'm curious whether they pay the man or how that deal shakes out. And I would think that they'd be inclined to. But Jeff, what do you think that would look like, and how do you feel about him potentially getting an extension with the Colts?
Ooh, running backs getting a extension right now in this market. I don't even know what a running back extension looks like in 2023.
Is that
This,
because it hasn't happened yet?
yeah, and it looks like everyone is like being very bullish and holding out on all of this. And I don't know if there is groundwork for this right now. Like, does he reset the market? I mean, he's a good enough running back to do that. This is a new coaching staff, so like this isn't even the coaching staff that drafted him. There's a lot of questions and concerns about what this looks like in the end. And there's always a possibility that they don't reach a number that they agree on and they end up trading him. So there is that possibility as well. But I probably wouldn't go any more than I for someone as young as Taylor, I probably would guarantee 3 years.
How much per year?
I knew you were going to ask that.
Put
So,
you on the spot?
so what's McCaffrey? 16 a year?
I believe
Was
so.
that the most ever too? I think.
I think so.
And Barkley's getting an offer of 14 a year, but Barkley's actually like a true-ish free agent. Like Taylor hasn't reached the franchise tag portion of his career yet. Oh man, so if Barkley's getting 14 a year, if they were going to sign it right now, I probably would say 12.5 a year would be my best guess on that, and it would be a complete guess because no one's really paying running backs double digits anymore.
I would say probably 10 million a year is my guess.
Yeah, but that's the franchise number right now, so we'll see.
Yeah, I don't think he contributes in the passing game as much as McCaffrey or Barkley or Kamara does.
Very
So
true.
I wouldn't give him the full 16 million, and I would give him a very front heavy deal. So the later end of the deal would be a much lower number because you can always renegotiate if he's still productive at that point. But you also want to be able to cut bait if he suddenly, like, his talent or his body just drops off a cliff. Then you want to be able to cut him. And that's the unfortunate truth when it comes to athletes in general, especially running backs.
Agreed. And I know we just mentioned Barkley a little bit here, but it looks like the New York Giants are putting their best offer back on the table for him.
What was their best offer, Jeff?
14 a year ish.
Allegedly.
Ish.
They haven't posted the actual contract details. We've just heard that that's what they offered, and that they are offering the same deal again after Barkley talking to the media and how annoyed he is with the situation. So maybe that's true. Maybe that's not. Maybe the Giants are trying to win the PR battle. I don't know. But if I was Barkley and they offered me $14 million in this running back climate, I would definitely take that deal.
So it does seem like he's leaning towards taking that deal. I think a lot of it's structure and language, and I think they just need to hammer the rest of that out.
Yeah, we don't know how much the guaranteed aspect is either. So maybe if it's 14 million is like, okay, 500,000 of it is guaranteed. I could see him saying no. So
Yeah, what if the guarantee is less than what the franchise tag is?
yeah, I could see him saying no because it would make more sense to just have the franchise in.
But the Giants could be on their high horse being like, "Oh, we offered him 14 million a year."
That's true. That's very true. And these are things that typically come out a year or two after the fact, but we'll find out. It makes sense for them to work something out, at least for the short term. But having a lot of that money invested in a running back is not a good long term strategy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I just don't see any playoff teams, any Super Bowl contenders having a top paid running back. I just don't think that that happens anymore. Do you recall any in recent history?
No, no. Virtually no team that's drafted a running back in the first round has gone to the Super Bowl and won the Super Bowl with that running back either, other than the Chiefs with Clyde Edwards-Helaire. So that should tell you all you need to know.
But they're not gonna pay him though. I think
No, of
I
course
think
not.
I think that's
He,
part of the
he
thing
didn't.
though.
He didn't even start that Super Bowl. He was benched. So
And I know you were very bullish, and you probably still are, on Ronald Jones, but I do think Clyde Edwards-Helaire gets the Ronald Jones treatment with his next team. I don't think the next team ever looks at the guy the same way that the team that drafted the guy looks at him. And I think, and the more that so even like Delvin Cook, like he goes to his second team, I don't expect him to have nearly the amount of success that he had with Minnesota. I just think that that team that drafts you or gives up draft compensation for you, they look at you completely different than any other team would. And I said draft compensation because I do lump Christian McCaffrey into that group because 49ers gave up essentially what was the equivalent of a first round pick with the 3 picks to Carolina. And basically, so they kind of look at him the same and they kind of take ownership of him the same as if they did draft him in that case, in that scenario. But any player that signs as a free agent with that next team, a la Le'Veon Bell or Todd Gurley, they just don't really have that same success that they did with that first team. So just a blanket statement that we need to be on the lookout for running backs going forward. And I know that we want to hear that Montgomery is a savior for the Lions, but again, second team, no draft compensation. I want to temper some expectations on situations like that. Now, this year there might be one exception of Miles Sanders, but that's only because Carolina invested so much in him and they don't have anything else that they invested in. So it just might be one of those outlier situations, but we'll see what happens with Miles Sanders' draft stock as we get a little bit closer to drafts.
I don't know why Miles Sanders would be the exception and not David Montgomery, who is replacing Jamal Williams and is going to be in the Jamal Williams role and get a bunch of touchdowns. He is a better running back than Jamal Williams.
If Swift was healthy last year, there would have been no Jamal Williams role. So Gibbs, I expect to be much healthier than Swift going into this year.
I don't know. I think they like the two running back. I think the two running back system. So I think that's what they're going to do from here on out. but Jeffrey, I think that we should talk about DK Dobbins, who is also looking for more money. And I think his case is interesting because the other guys are near the end of their deal, but have the pedigree and the production to really actually have some kind of leverage in the negotiation. Whereas J.K. Dobbins has gotten 1,300 yards in 3 years and he wants more money. It doesn't make any sense to me at all. The leading rusher for the Ravens the last 4 seasons in a row is the quarterback, Lamar Jackson, not a running back. So I don't know where he thinks he's going to get this money from or why they should even give him any money, because it seems to me they can get someone from the street, put him at the running back position, and get just as many yards as he's put up in 3 years. So, what do you think about J.K. Dobbins? Do you think he's still fantasy relevant? Do you think he's still a good running back? Do you think he deserves more money? Do you think he's going to get any kind of money in extension? What do you think about his situation?
So JK is a interesting specimen here because we don't know what JK is asking for. We don't know if he's just asking for more years, or we don't know if he's asking for more money per year. We really don't know what the hold-in is about, really, but we do know that he wants some sort of contract modification, extension, etc. And he's a running back that is going into year 4 of his rookie deal. So that does mean he will be a free agent after this year, eligible to be franchise tagged, etc. And we do know that the Ravens are not shy about putting the non-exclusive franchise tag on somebody. So this is something Dobbins is probably aware of. And he could get essentially year-to-year deals this year and next year. And he's a guy that's coming off of a pretty bad leg injury that actually gave him another injury last year. So usually, sometimes when you come back from an injury, you can have another injury that's caused by overcompensating for that injury, and that does seem that that happened to Dobbins last season. But he was really effective down the stretch. And I do think one thing that is going for him, and I'm not saying he's worth like 10 million a season, anything like that, but is he worth like 6 over the next 3? So like $18 million for a 3-year deal? He's absolutely worth that next year. And it gives him the security and the longevity of actually getting guaranteed money in case he does get injured. But the one thing that's going in his favor is Lamar is going to be scaled back as a runner. And I do believe that J.K. Dobbins is much more talented than Gus Edwards or any other running back that the Ravens have currently. And so his hold in might be something that is taken seriously because they do like his talent, and they do believe that with a 1-year OBJ deal that there's some pressure to actually win this year. And I'm not talking about winning a Super Bowl, I'm talking about winning a playoff game right now. Like, but with that, sometimes that pressure can cause front offices to make hasty deals, and we will see if this is one of those times, or if the Ravens go to the streets and sign another running back.
I don't think he'd be worth $6 million next year. I don't think that he's done anything to warrant any kind of paycheck at all past his current contract. I think this year should be a prove it deal. And if he does stay healthy for the year and he does get over 1,000 yards rushing, or is very effective, then yes, pay the man. But I wouldn't trust him with more money at this point. And I think you could get someone like Leonard Fournette or someone like Kareem Hunt, who could be more effective than what Dobbins has actually put out right now. But speaking of Kareem Hunt, there is some interest out there. The Washington Commanders have inquired on Kareem Hunt and are potentially interested in adding him, which would dampen the prospects for Gibson and Brian Robinson. But Jeff, what do you make of that?
Ooh, that becomes a crowded backfield with that. I don't like it. I don't like the Washington Commanders for that because I think that trying to decipher who's going to be the lead back for the Commanders is going to be extremely difficult, with Hunt declining, Brian Robinson actually like getting his first crack at this, because I know last year he played, but there's no way the guy wasn't hampered by the 2 gunshot wounds that he had that held him out for the first 4 to 6 games last season. I don't. Guy was on crutches, and then all of a sudden back playing football games in the blink of an eye. But I could see him losing some explosiveness and some confidence in rushing while that's healing. I think though, and Gibson's being talked up, and he's entering a contract year this year. But I want to go back to Brian Robinson. He could be potentially like a buy low this year in drafts. Like, people would be less confident with him just based on what he put up last year. I just think that he's a guy that we don't really know what he is completely, just because of the injury and the circumstances around the injury that he had last year. So Brian Robinson's my guy in that backfield, but I don't like anything that muddies it up further than it already is muddied up.
Yep, I agree. I think Kareem Hunt should probably go to a different team, someone who doesn't already have a receiving back on their roster. But it's just interesting that Washington is the first team that reached out.
Absolutely.
But we have one last running back on our agenda here, and that is Sony Michel, signed with the Los Angeles Rams. It's a reunion back to that team. He knows the playbook. However, is that a good signing overall? Is he still bringing anything to the table? Is he fantasy relevant? Jeff, what do you think?
Whew, this was one thing that we were talking about offline as well. And I think Cam Akers is going to be the unquestioned one right now. And obviously that could change tomorrow if they went and signed Leonard Fournette, and they could go sign Zeke Elliott. There's a lot they could go sign Dalvin Cook. There's a lot that they could do that would make Akers not be the number one with Fournette, with Elliott, with Cook, anybody that's on the street right now. But right now, Akers is the number one. Number two is where it gets a little bit more difficult. It's probably going to be Zach Evans, the rookie. Number three, would it be Williams? It's the number two there, or it's a second year there, and he was the number two last year. But the rookie could pass him. He could be anywhere between 3 and 4 running back on the depth chart, in my opinion. Is that kind of what you see as well, or do you feel a little bit differently?
I mean, I'm kind of all over the place on this one. I don't think he's a threat to Akers. That's the one thing I'm sure about. And outside of that, he is someone that knows the playbook. He is someone that they could use in the preseason to keep Akers healthy. Just keep Akers on the sideline the entire preseason for the games, and just put Sony Michel in with the ones just to go in for Akers, be a Akers placeholder. And I think that Zach Evans is the most talented person besides Akers in the running back group. I think Williams isn't very fast. There's rumors that he is dealing with leg injuries, and that's why he was relatively slow. He probably has more than Sony Michel at this point. So I really see Sony Michel as the fourth running back in this group, potentially the third, but they may not have the rookie come right in at the beginning. So might start as a second and then slowly get shifted back on that roster. We'll see.
Camp and preseason is a long stretch, about 6
Yep.
to 8 weeks, and a lot could happen there. There could be injuries that catapult him higher on the depth chart, and then there's also complete health and performance of other folks that could push him down the depth chart. So I think
Mm-hmm.
there's a lot that could happen, and it's just going to be one of those situations to monitor over time.
Yep, I agree. And speaking of camp, Jeff, you have some dates for the NFL deadlines and important dates coming up.
The NFL has made official so many dates coming up. The first one is going to be August 29th, and that is going to be the day that NFL rosters need to be cut from 90 to 53. This is the first year that they're doing the 90 to 53 without intermittent cuts in between there. So it's going to happen all at once. There's going to be 47 players from each team all of a sudden unemployed all at once. Then there's going to be a waiver process, and there's going to be a whole bunch of players signed and even more players released from there. And also, there's going to be practice squads that come from that. But that's a big date because we're going to find out if Sony Michel makes roster that day, potentially. And we'll see who gets traded, surprisingly, during that time as well. Speaking of trades, we have the trade deadline October 31st. Halloween, 4 p.m. Eastern. And it's a big day because one of the players on your fantasy team could be traded. One of the players on your real team could also be traded. But fantasy wise, it does typically take a player a week or two to fully get immersed into a new team. So it could impact you for a few weeks watching someone being traded. Recently, Zach Ertz was traded, and that's one that comes to mind in this area.
What about if your team struggles this year and you want hope for the next season? When can we expect to look for signings?
You know what my favorite day of the year is? My favorite day of the year is legal tampering. And I know they don't call it that, but it's legal tampering. It's when going to be free agents can talk with other teams, and that's going to be March 11th, 2024 at noon Eastern. And basically what that means is we're going to hear a whole bunch of deals on March 11th, 2024, and I'm going to have to update all my projections and everything during that time period. But I do love that it's an earlier March this year because it's typically right around St. Patrick's Day. So this actually is the earlier the better, because I want right after the Super Bowl, we're all a little bit down, and like the next football season's not for a little while. We have the XFL, the USFL, but not the same as the legal tampering period for this. And then if you want to get even better, there's the 2024 draft, which will take place the 25th of April 2024 to April 27th, 2024. Same format as last year: first round, first day; second and third round, second day; and then the rest, 4 through 7, the last day. But always fun to watch the draft, especially the first 2 nights. And you can always expect a lot of trades, especially as GMs seem like they've turned into fantasy football GMs lately.
Certainly seems that way.
Hey, we inspire them. What can I say?
Everyone's always listening to our podcast for ideas.
Oh, yeah, they are.
All right, everybody. Well, that does it for another episode of the Never Too Early Fantasy Football Podcast. Thank you all for downloading or listening to this episode. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. Please leave us a comment and share the show. Every little bit helps.
As always, you can find us with our handle at N2EFantasy on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Please give us a follow. Until next time, take care of yourselves, and remember, it's truly never too early for fantasy football. Thank you again.
Bye, everybody.